First, let's start with this case. We have a large, blended family. My wife is Mexican, and our holiday traditions reflect a mix of cultures. On Christmas Eve, her family begins dropping by, and we host both her side and my side for Christmas Day dinner. Across those 2 days, we have more than 50 people in and out of the house. It's always lively, filled with tequila, tamales, and plenty of laughter. My wife and I both enjoy drinks during the holidays. She's a wine lover, and I often receive bottles of tequila as gifts. This year, my older brother Mike started dating a woman named Jenny, who has 3 children. I've only met briefly over the summer. Jenny wants to bring her kids to our Christmas celebrations, but informed us that her children are not allowed around people who drink. Mike now expects me to ban all alcohol from my house to accommodate them. My mother is backing him up, saying it's unnecessary to have alcohol at Christmas with children around. This confuses me because I also have 2 kids, ages 5 and 8, who love our boisterous holiday traditions and playing with their cousins. There aren't any other children on my side of the family besides Jenny's kids, so the idea is that I need to adjust my house rules so her children like my family. On top of the alcohol issue, Jenny is very into Santa Claus and Elf on the Shelf. My wife and I don't emphasize Santa in our home due to her Mexican Catholic roots. For us, Santa is more of a symbolic figure, and we never did the naughty and nice thing. My children and their cousins have grown up with this understanding. Jenny, however, is concerned about how my kids and their cousins might ruin Santa and Elf on the Shelf for her children, ages 4 to 10, if they bring it up. I suggested that my mom or Mike and Jenny host Christmas next year if this is such a big issue. But for this year, I don't feel like banning tequila, wine, and beer or forcing my kids to pretend Santa is real to fit her traditions. Frankly, I think Jenny and her children should stay home if these rules are non-negotiable for her. Let's start judging. Jenny seems high maintenance and reeking of entitlement. Her priority as a newcomer to this large family should be to get to know others, insert herself and her children into what seems a wonderfully blended group of adults and children. Her approach is hostile, rude, impolite, oblivious to others, self-centered. She is setting conditions to people she does not know. I commend your brother for being so accommodating to a woman he has been dating since not long ago. But mi casa is no Jenny's casa. Jenny can opt for celebrating Christmas in the abstinence of her home, and thus protect her children from, the horror. Adults celebrating a centuries-old tradition, in the presence of their children, united by love, tolerance, curiosity to know one another. You're not in the wrong, and stand your ground. If Jenny's children aren't allowed to be around people who drink alcohol, she can easily solve the problem by not coming to your house for Christmas. Your brother and mother can host their own Jenny-approved event. Your celebration sounds very similar to how my Eastern European family celebrated Christmas. Lots of good food, brandy, wine, cookies. Sure, some people got a little drunk, but it was part of the experience. Like you, Santa was not recognized in our home. Baby Jesus and the angels brought our gifts. St. Nicholas, not Santa, visited on December 6th to leave little treats in our shoes. You're not in the wrong. You're not in the wrong. It's completely unreasonable of her to dictate that you can't drink alcohol in the house if you have 50+ other people popping in for drinks and food. Or maybe she just doesn't realize what the vibe is going to be. That's just what happens at Christmas, so she'll need to make an exception or come and visit another time when it's just you and them. As for Santa, tell your kids that her kids believe in Santa and ask them if they'd be okay with playing along. They'll probably love to do that. Next up, I, 60F, have rented my second home to my son Joe, 34, for the past 7 years. Initially, he shared the home with friends, paying below-market rent. The lease agreements included clauses for periodic, reasonable rent increases, and I made it clear from the start that this property was part of my retirement nest egg. If there was ever a risk to that investment, I would need to sell it immediately. Over the years, there were a few issues with the property. Once, I lost homeowner's insurance because the house wasn't being properly maintained. We addressed the problems and got it reinstated. Twice, I lost my job and struggled to pay the mortgage on both the rental property and my primary residence, but I managed to find new employment quickly and avoided selling. Each time, I reminded Joe that if financial difficulties persisted, I might have to sell the house, and they should prepare for that possibility. I also suggested to Joe that he consider saving money in case he ever wanted to buy the house. At first, he wasn't interested, but about 2 years ago, his girlfriend, 32F, moved in, and he seemed more open to the idea. I was happy for them and thought we had a good relationship. They decided to live together as a couple and asked their housemates to move out. His girlfriend even coordinated efforts to clean up and better maintain the house, which made me happy. However, the neighborhood started changing dramatically. Investors were buying properties at inflated prices, turning them into rentals, or leaving them vacant for long periods. A shooting occurred just a block away. It was becoming clear that it was time to sell and take advantage of the high market prices before the bubble burst. In the fall of 2023, I spoke to Joe and his girlfriend about my decision and explained why they needed to start planning to move out by the fall of 2024. During that conversation, we briefly discussed their finances, and they admitted they couldn't afford to buy the house. Likely not ever, given how much property values had increased. After that conversation, everything changed. Joe's girlfriend became openly rude to me in person and via text messages. When they moved out, they left petty, vindictive messages around the house. They refused to give anyone in the family their new address. In 2017, I had promised Joe a portion of the profit when I sold the house, and I honored that promise. The day after I sent him the check, he changed his phone number. He has gone no contact and broken my heart. His father, 71M, my ex-husband, told me that Joe eventually called him, but still refused to share his address. Joe said if I ever got his number, he would change it again and never trust him. Joe claims that he and his girlfriend have cut me out of their lives because I sold the house out from under them. I feel torn. On the one hand, I tried to give them plenty of notice, had communicated for years that selling was a possibility, and even gave Joe a share of the profit. On the other hand, I wonder if I could have handled the situation differently to avoid this fallout. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. You gave your son notice all along that this was not a long-term solution. You talked with son and his girlfriend, and they could not afford to buy the house. You kept your word all throughout this, including writing that check to him, which my petty behind would have not done. OP, I am sorry you are hurting over the loss of your son and how he has and is treating you. Sadly, your son was looking for you to continue how things went, even when it got so hard for you. Son forgets that you could have sold the house when you lost your job earlier. What would he have done then? Probably treated you the same way. It sadly sounds like you will always be in your son and his GF, the villain, in their story. I am so sorry you are going through this. You're not in the wrong. They sound very ungrateful. You subsidized your son for years with below-market value rent. Sounds like he and his girlfriend were hoping that would go on indefinitely. Maybe get the word to him that he should be concerned about your will. You're not in the wrong. He has chosen the girlfriend. Plan on leaving it to someone else. Make sure he can contest it. My guess, if they break up, you will hear from him again. I think more along the line of making a Facebook post. Gave my son below-market rent for years. He told he didn't want to buy the house. He then changed his mind after meeting girlfriend, but couldn't afford it since he didn't save like he was supposed to, while saving on rent. The money went somewhere other than savings. He now cut contact since I will not give him a free house. Also, day after I gave him a cut, the sale he changed his number. Say hello to him if you see him. Next up, I, 25F, and my husband, 25M, are currently having a major disagreement. We live 6 hours away from his family, and it feels like every holiday we're expected to drop everything and visit them. This year, I made it clear that since we were going to visit his family for Thanksgiving, I wanted to spend Christmas at home. My brother flew up to visit and will be staying with us until January 2nd, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity to have a quieter holiday at home. Over the past few weeks, my husband started dropping hints about all of us going to see his family for Christmas. I brushed it off playfully, saying things like, "But we went for Thanksgiving, remember?" Or, "It's our kitten's first Christmas. We can't miss that." I was trying to keep things lighthearted, hoping he'd understand without a serious argument. Today, things came to a head. Apparently, several members of his family called him to ask if he was coming for Christmas and why not. He confronted me and asked why we weren't going. I repeated my reasons. We had just visited for Thanksgiving, it's a long drive, and I wanted to spend this holiday at home. Instead of understanding, he became angry and said, "I guess this will just be a miserable fooing Christmas then." I was stunned. Last Christmas, he spent the holiday in Mexico with his family, and we didn't even spend it together. I tried to offer a compromise, suggesting we could visit them for New Year's instead. But he shut that down, saying he didn't want to go at all anymore. Then he said something that really hurt. "This isn't what I expected from marriage. You not wanting to go see my family or whatever this is." I started crying. After we got home and put away the groceries, I hid in the guest room and sent him a message to express my feelings because I find it easier to write than talk when I'm upset. I told him I feel like his family always comes first. When his family makes plans, he's willing to move mountains. But when I want to do something, it often gets dismissed. We've been together for 7 years and married for 3. I feel like I'm asking for so little, to spend just one holiday at home, with him, and my brother who traveled to be with us. Am I asking too much to want one Christmas at home with my husband? Let's start judging. You have both grown up and have incompatible lifestyle values. Move on and find an adult that likes you and where you agree on this stuff. It isn't all about love or a shared history. We should pick life partners who want to have a similar, compatible life. Kids, stop marrying your high school sweethearts in your early 20s. There is never any harm in waiting a few more years to marry if you are meant for each other. A lot of relationships don't survive the difference between who you are at 18 and 25. You're not in the wrong. It sounds like a combination of two things. By answering playfully and brushing it off, I think your husband has the impression that you decided on a whim that suddenly you're just not down to visit his family. He doesn't take it seriously. I suggest an open conversation where you tell him exactly why you don't want to go with a straight face, no playful tones or chuckles, or making light of it. I also think he's not making an effort to hear you, and he's bullying you into what he wants to do. This is wildly uncool, so bring that up as well. You're not in the wrong. Tell him he can go without you until he finally grows up enough to cut the apron strings. Seriously, many couples alternate holidays even with in-town relatives. He doesn't get to unilaterally decide where you go for every single holiday, especially with a 6-hour drive. He's selfish and immature. Next up, I, 35F, and my husband, 36M, are hosting Christmas this year for my brother, 33M, his wife, 33F, and their kids, 6F and 2M. So far, everything has gone smoothly except for one issue that has caused some tension. Apparently, my brother's family has a tradition of stringing popcorn on their Christmas tree. It's not something we did growing up, but it's a tradition from my sister-in-law's side of the family, and she's now incorporated it into their holiday celebrations. The problem is that my husband and I have had a major issue with bugs recently. We dealt with a fly infestation in our kitchen, as well as ants crawling on the counters. We believe the problem started because we got busy and weren't able to keep the kitchen as clean as usual, which attracted pests. We managed to get the situation under control with sprays, fly traps, and staying on top of cleaning. Now that the house is clean, we're determined to keep it that way and avoid doing anything that might attract bugs again. One of the rules we've set is not leaving any food out in the house, which is why we think stringing popcorn on the Christmas tree is a bad idea. It could potentially bring the bugs back. When we explained this to my brother and sister-in-law, they were upset. They said they always string popcorn on the tree and that their kids would be very disappointed if they couldn't do it. We apologized but stood firm, explaining that we don't want to risk another pest issue. My sister-in-law insisted we were being ridiculous and overreacting. Let's start judging. I have never strung popcorn on a tree, but always considered that a fun activity for an outdoor tree, so birds and squirrels get a treat. I would never want that on my indoor Christmas tree. And it's also very rude of your brother and wife to insist and to keep harping on how their kids will be disappointed. If their kids were that disappointed, they can do that at their own house then. You're not in the wrong, but your brother and wife are. You're not in the wrong. And from personal, painful experience earned as a result of an overzealous mother, there is nothing more unfun than making popcorn garlands with needles, thread, and for some reason, unnecessarily salty popcorn. Fighting insects is miserable, so definitely you're not in the wrong. When I was a kid, my mother decided to make strings of popcorn and cranberries for an old-fashioned tree. We strung it up and then left for the evening to visit family for the holidays. We came back and the tree was on its side, brought down by our dog who ate all of the popcorn. That was the first and last time we put popcorn on the tree. What a mess.